Namaste and welcome to the Bharat Varta podcast. The markets had remained buoyant for a while, but over the last week and couple of weeks, in fact, we saw a bit of a correction, I would say, right? And to discuss this, we have a couple of folks that you are absolutely familiar with. We have Nimish, who's a senior corporate leader and also a director of the policy think tank SMAHI. Hi, Nimish. Welcome.
Hi, Roshan. Thanks for having this podcast once again, inviting me on.
Yeah, great to have you back. And we also have Rajiv. Of course, you've heard Rajiv on multiple podcasts. He's an investor and also the author of the amazing book, New Idea of India. Hi, Rajiv. Great to have you back.
Thank you for having me back, Roshan. Happy to be here.
So, Rajiv, let's start with you. Your opening comments on what we've seen over the last couple of weeks. I mean, there seems to be a little bit of a panic in some quarters that this could be like a long pending correction, etc. Right? But as we were discussing just before we started recording, it hasn't really been so much of a correction as just like a minor sort of a fall, right?
Yeah, so I think from the high that was made in October, I think the index has pulled back maybe 7-8%. But I think if we see that in the context of the larger foreign institutional investor selling that's been going on. So FIs have been selling very heavily last 2 months, but the index has gone down maybe around 8%, 7%. Maybe in the mid caps and small caps, there have been larger sort of drawdowns, but still I feel it shows in a way the strength of Indian market to hold up even this level. A certain maturation that's coming in with retail investors coming in with significant SIP flows, domestic institutions and others stepping up. So I think all of that put together has certainly brought a balance. If we go back 10-15 years, chances are a selling on this scale by foreign investors would have brought the index down by easily 20-25%. But that this time has not happened. So I see that as a positive. Having said that, 7-8% pullback is, so far at least, is not anything that substantive. This happens all the time. I mean, I continue to think we are in a kind of secular kind of bull run. And as the economy grows, as we see reforms keep happening, the markets will keep performing.
Right. So Nimish, just touching upon what Rajiv mentioned, we've seen record number of retail investors enter the market, right, over the last 1 or 2 years. That seems to have made the market more robust, would you say? I mean, we're continuing to see like the valuations of some of the companies are continuing to remain optimistic with few corrections here and there. But overall, what do you make of it?
Yeah, I think a few things. Of course, there's been some correction, and when you look at it, I guess you can never look at a market from a 1-2 month perspective, and there has been a correction. Now, if I were to take a 6-month horizon, and I don't have the exact numbers, but I'm fairly sure in the last 6 months, the Indian market would still be the best performing market in the world. If not the best, maybe in the top 3. And surely, yes, last 2-3 months has been a correction. And so these ups and downs, even if you were to even it out over a longish term, the Indian market has performed fairly well. That's one. Second, what tends to happen is after a market performs well, there are two, I think, say global trends right now in general. There's over the last 2 months, definitely a EM to DM, which is emerging markets to developed market trend of capital flows, which is happening. So that's one thing which probably India has suffered a bit from, because of which markets have corrected. And secondly, generally when markets tend to, there was definite overheating in some parts of the market. I would say new age internet companies and some other sectors. And obviously there is some correction in those I would say applies. But if you were to look at overall market, Bank Nifty has been probably the biggest driver of the market going down. And if you were to even that out, I would say India wouldn't have performed that badly. Clearly a function of FIIs who were over-owning banks and their capital has gone down. So I think that's been the broad trend.
Yeah, if you look at weightage, I mean, something like 30% of Nifty is banking and financial services stocks, right? Yeah, I mean, given the amount of money that has really gone out, it really hasn't reflected in that proportion. Rajiv, I mean, we've also seen specific sectors get affected a little more adversely. Banking is something that Nimish spoke about. But what do you make of the IPO market? I mean, it seems like, post Paytm, the kind of optimism for, new startup IPOs seems to have toned down a bit. But I mean, having said that, I mean, we had a blockbuster IPO of MapMy India recently, right?
No, yeah. So I think companies which are actually profitable, having those kind of good business models and all, will probably still be able to access the market. What has gotten probably a little bit harder after Zomato and others listing is the loss-making companies going public. That's become slightly more difficult. Probably the bar has gone a little bit up, and even the regulators looking at this side of the listing segment on whether this should continue, whether they should review it, because there was a certain outcry, right, about what happened after some of the IPOs with the post-listing kind of prices coming down and the listing underperforming. So I just see this as a kind of dynamic, it's a process of evolution. It will keep happening. Even tech companies now will find reception, will find that traction with, I think, even retail investors, which they were not getting, let's say, 5 years ago. So I think the dam has been broken. Whatever one says about the future of all these new age companies, I think what they have achieved is really they have successfully kind of breached new ground, even in the IPO market.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I go back to Make My Trip listing in NASDAQ for, I don't know, whatever, a few tens of millions of dollars, way back in 2010, I think, right? And you compare that with, where we are right now. Certainly, I think new ground has been reached, right? So yeah, I mean, we're also seeing Policybazaar, MobiKwik, their IPOs have been slightly delayed. But at the same time, we're also hearing Snapdeal, for example, has just put out reports that they're probably considering an IPO. Nimish, I mean, do you think in Jan, I think listings will be back to what they were earlier, optimistic?
So I think there is definitely, I would say, as I said, recently there was this Veer Das show, there are two Indias kind of things. I think similarly there are two ways the market is going to respond. First, clearly, I guess, and it's not India specific, globally, if you see, wherever there are loss-making companies, the market's desire or tolerance for some of those has gone down. There is no doubt about it in the last and it's not just 2-3 months. In the US and all, it's been happening over a maybe slightly longer time frame. And all those IPOs, pretty much a lot of IPOs are underwater, and significantly. So I guess I don't think India is immune from that theory, from that issue. So someone like a Zomato got a great reception 6 months back. I feel fairly certain if they were to come to IPO today, they would have had to cut the valuation a bit to get a better reception. And that is something which is going to impact follow the IPOs which are planning to hit over the next 3-4 months. If you are a profitable company showing profit, showing some market leadership like a Nykaa or a MapMy India, markets are willing to pay a premium. Same thing in the US. If you are not profitable, suffering huge losses, then, I mean, unless there is like a real big X factor somewhere, all the companies will have to, suppose they're planning to go public at a X valuation, say, my sense is everyone will have to take a 20 to 30% haircut to cross the threshold. That's definitely over the next 3 to 4 months. And there are a bunch of these: PharmEasy, Oyo, I hear Ola, MobiKwik, Snapdeal probably might be smaller, but there are a bunch of these names floating around, some of which have already filed their DRHP. So I feel that is something which all of us have to be wary of, or rather these companies. It's not as free a market as it was 4 or 5 months back for loss-making companies. Having said that, there is definitely greater acceptability. Risk appetite has gone up. At the right price, there will be buyers. Now, there is a second broader theme. If you see, of course, the FIIs or foreign institutions have shown greater propensity to buy into these IPOs. They would have seen such companies going public in other markets. So if the trend of FIIs pulling out money stays for the next couple of months, 2-3 months, that makes it slightly tougher, I would say, for these companies to go IPO. So if you ask me, and I've been a big bull on India, I still feel getting any IPO across the line in the first quarter of 2022 might be difficult. The new age companies, I am saying, but at the same time, smaller issues, profitable like a MapMy India, Latent View, you've seen a great response because the domestic market as well as everyone, the size of the issue is small. There are a lot of takers, so there is going to be a dichotomy on the performance. I won't expect the heavy hitters or the so-called news grabbers to really grow public over the next 3-4 minutes. It's going to be a difficult market for them.
Yeah. No, I agree with you completely. I think the novelty of startup IPOs has kind of worn off, right? Post Paytm,
Exactly, yeah.
for sure, right? And yeah, I mean, any company will perhaps list on the merit of its business. We're seeing that in the US as well, right? I mean, stocks have taken a proper beating. I mean, Grab is down about 45-50%, I think, from when they listed in December, on December 2nd. Even SaaS companies like DocuSign is like down around 40% over the month and so on. So, Rajiv, you think any other macro factors will contribute to how things will play out in the Indian markets?
So there are two kind of elephants in the room which we've not talked about yet, right? One is obviously the Omicron variant, which caused a panic to begin with. I think that was the kind of additional trigger that the Indian market and other markets went through. And second is inflation. So on the macro side, I think these two aspects of how they evolve, especially the Omicron virus. Let's see how the next few weeks go. Indications are that there could be a certain spike in overall cases. Now, the fatality of those cases is still, from whatever I gather, probably not that high. Even if the cases do go up, there could be a certain panic. We all want to avoid that, but let's see when the thing happens. Maybe in the next 2 weeks or 5 weeks, by second half of January, maybe. When those cases are escalating, how do governments, particularly Indian state governments, how do they react to this? Because we're already seeing them pushing the panic button, going for certain curfews, going for those tighter rules on gatherings and crowds and so on, which frankly, I believe at this point is a little bit excessive.
Yeah.
We have to realize that this virus is here to stay. Those kind of lockdowns or curfews are not going to help us. In fact, they end up doing damage. What is important is carrying on, taking the boosters, making sure everyone gets immunized. And that's the best we can do when we try to carry on.
Yeah.
And on the inflation bit, any scare that does come on the central banks raising rates, particularly the Fed raising rates, that does send a kind of quick sort of scare, right? Like it spreads a certain panic, particularly in all emerging markets. Again, like as Nimish was pointing out, India has probably been among the most resilient EMs like that. If you look at others, they've not done as well as India. So certainly, I think investors are rewarding all the good steps that the government has been taking in the last few years. They're recognizing that these reforms probably will pay off, help put India on a longer-term growth trajectory of probably 7-8% plus. And that makes India the fastest growing economy in the world. We are a 3 trillion GDP economy. So $3 trillion to like probably $5 trillion is kind of on the horizon. So that makes people very, very positive.
No, on the Omicron front, I think precaution and not panic is the right response at this point of time. Yeah. Considering that we're almost nearing the 2-year mark on on a post-COVID world per se, right? And but at the same time, something archaic like lockdowns or whatever will definitely trigger the same panic response, right? People may at least wait until what happens to see what happens, right? So Nimish, what do you think are some regulatory tailwinds that might actually impact the markets and in a nice way, actually, going further? Because as Rajiv mentioned, there is this ever looming threat of the Fed stopping or tightening its thing on the printing the money and stuff, right? So there is that, and there is Omicron and everything. What could be some opposite trends? I mean, what do you see as some good policy things that maybe the Indian government can do, or maybe someone else, banks elsewhere would do that would raise confidence in the markets?
See, I think clearly a few things. This whole PLI scheme which Indian government has done, is huge positive. Some of these things take time to show up in companies becoming bigger and economic impact, and maybe also probably in stock market. But clearly, I guess some of those different PLIs, I think the latest one for semiconductors. So, I mean, there is no way that overall economic measures that the government have, the Air India privatization, this whole PLI schemes, I think these are super structural positives, and which is why India has performed the way it has. The people are already believing in the government and doing. If you want a quick steroid booster, I would say maybe getting long-term capital gains tax to zero, something of that sort can really, I would say, a near-term up move, or that can definitely be one regulatory up move that suddenly can change the sentiment, and FIs will again start pouring in money. And they're a fickle lot, right? They quickly change direction. They're not ideological that way. So I guess that is something which can change. But otherwise, the government seems to be doing everything possible to do a positive movement around structural economic factors. Maybe Rajiv can add a few, but at least the vantage point I am in, be it PLI, the continued banking sector reforms, I mean, account on the tech side as well as the debt resolution side. All these are super structural positives, and wherever RBI or the government is seeing risks, it is immediately cranking down. Just yesterday, you saw the news in the Ratnakar Bank. So stop loss is as important, right? I mean, to actively intervene. So I guess government seems to be doing a lot to really move the economy positively. Maybe Rajiv can add a few more things, but I don't think they can do a lot more beyond.
I would say actually generally on direct taxes. So reforms in direct taxes. My personal view is there should be some kind of long-term capital gains tax in the secondary market, because ultimately what should be incentivized is, let's say, if you're investing in the primary aspect in a private company. Frankly, world over, taxes are probably lower if you are investing privately versus publicly, or at least it is not the other way around. Like, you want to reward primary investment, which is actually creating jobs, nurturing new businesses, seeding new businesses, etc. So in India, for a long time, we've had it the other way around. If you're investing in private companies, chances are you're paying a higher tax. If you're investing in the public market, chances are for a long time you paid no tax. So overall taxation of capital assets is quite, I think, all over the place. And it's been the area for a long time. I think many observers have been saying that we should have an overhaul. Just the way we overhauled indirect taxes with GST, even the direct tax side should see a comprehensive overhaul. So that is one reform I think will be a very big positive. I mean, on the corporate taxation side, we already saw that a few years ago. When in 2019, I think the corporate tax cut had happened. So we should see that in personal income taxes. We should see that in the taxation of capital assets, whether you're sort of how you tax real estate gains versus unlisted equity gains versus listed equity gains. We should move to a regime where investors don't make decisions on where to invest based on tax, which I do think is happening right now. We need to move to a regime where investors are making decisions based on economic criteria as to which asset class will do better, which asset class is the best place to park your money. So that is one reform I would like to see. I think that will be extremely well received whenever that happens. I'm hopeful it will happen in the next 12 months, like maybe in calendar year 2022.
Let me back up a little and ask, how much of our policy do you think we should index on the markets, right? I mean, there's always that meme that, economy and markets are separate things and may not be as tightly correlated. The markets may be optimistic considering, what things may be look like in 6 months' time, but the economy may be, not doing so well at the present. Question to both of you.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add a bit and then maybe Rajiv can bolt on. See, I think, of course, if you see in somewhere places like US and all, I think that correlation is one correlation coefficient. It's completely well correlated. And in India, of course, especially India was typically criticized for social sector spending and all that. But the reality in India is, for the GDP growth and all, and just how poor the people are, this whole flow down effect of you do something capitalistically and will flow down to the poorest people over the time frame doesn't work from a political timeline perspective. So intervention becomes very critical. What we've seen is those interventions, especially in the last 7 years under Prime Minister Modi's leadership, has really boosted the rural economy in a much positive way, which in turn has boosted the stock market because the consumer companies have done well. Rural economic, full range of rural economy stocks have emerged, which in turn have helped the markets. So I guess that is there. So my sense is whatever the government does, there is in the government spending bit of it, there's a delay in terms of how it actually falls through on the economic front, but the market seems to already price it in early, especially in this government. If you remember, I remember in like late 2000s and all, when government used to spend, it was seen as very negatively. Moment fiscal deficit numbers went high, the market used to crash, economy, the rupee used to weaken and all that. But no longer. You see, in fact, this time the government announced spending and the markets were like booming. So I think that perception change has happened. So my sense is whatever government does to really boost consumption or even infrastructure spending is taken very positively by the markets. I don't think they're as delinked as this anymore. And that's one. Second, what is also important is maybe 12, 15 years back, it was run too much by FIIs, the Indian market. That dependence has gone down. And so even if they are unhappy with some rupee depreciation somewhere and they pull out some money, that is more than balanced by the domestic investor, be it retail or HNIs or domestic MFs in which institutions. So I think India will probably also get towards in a somewhat like US, where there will be very tight coupling between regulation, this domestic economy and markets, and the regulation overseeing both. And see, ultimately, you see, what the biggest thing about markets is they affect sentiment. Whether you're invested in the market or not, what headlines is Sensex has fallen 1,000 points, Sensex has risen 1,000 points. That has tremendous signaling effect on the broader real economy, I would say, and on Wall Street having impact on Main Street, as they say. So it's always very important to sort of keep a tab and listen to the direction the market is giving. And and India has a twin deficit that way. Can't afford to have a capital account. It's always good to have the surplus out there through FII flows. So that's a very important one, I feel. Maybe Rajiv, you want to add on this one?
No, actually, so on the reforms and spending bit, so I think earlier that confidence was not there, even domestically as well as internationally. That if you announce a big government program, what happens actually? What is the net takeaway output from it? So earlier, I don't think that confidence was there, but we have seen in the last probably 5-7 years now how program after program is actually making an impact. It's making a dent. Whether it's like Swachh Bharat, whether it is Ujjwala, the gas connection and cooking gas availability program, whether it's Jal Jeevan now. So many of them are actually transformative for rural India. And I had tweeted about this, that if you total up how much time has been saved in a typical household, which let's say earlier somebody in the household in rural India, usually a woman, was required to collect firewood or collect basically चूल्हा जलाने के लिए लकड़ी इकट्ठा करना, उसमें टाइम जितना जा रहा था. फिर उसके बाद you don't have toilets in the house, so you have to go to the toilets in the fields, as people were doing for so many decades. Time going in that. Collecting water for the family, time going in that. So once you solved for these three big problems, you have created time for a household. That's someone in the household now has probably several hours a day free. They have dignity. They have more leeway to sort of do things, and they are connected. They have got the world's cheapest mobile data offerings. They have access now to some of the world's cheapest smartphone hardware. So all of them are going online, and thus we are seeing the kind of boom that we are seeing. In a way, all these reforms have indirectly changed the TAM, changed the total addressable market, with all these people coming online and them having the time because the government has provided those public goods which were not provided for earlier by all those governments we had in the last 60, 70 years. That's why I feel that when the government says we're going to have a national infrastructure pipeline, or they announced some other big ticket program, people take it seriously now because they know that given enough time, this government is going to finish it. They are going to deliver.
Right. No, I think not just the hard infrastructure policy measures, right? I mean, even some of the softer stuff like Beti Bachao and Swachh Bharat that you outlined and so on, right? I mean, they will definitely, have order of magnitudes impact on productivity in the long term, especially, right? I mean, some of these things.
Absolutely. What is productivity? Like if you save someone time, you are making them more productive to do something else, right? Yeah. So, I mean, for us urban folk, we cannot probably appreciate like having piped water in the household, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We have always had that, let's say. But for someone who was for years spending, several hours a day just collecting water for 4 people in the family, that was like, maybe if they were awake for 14 hours a day or 16 hours a day, then maybe 3 hours a day they were doing that. Now suddenly they're not doing that.
Yeah.
You turn on the tap and you have water in the house. These are urban amenities now available in rural areas.
Right.
So
and also planning your day around it, right? Planning your schedule around it. I mean, that's a bigger hassle.
It frees up your schedule, right? Like you don't have to do this. You don't have to do this. This is all taken care of.
Yeah. Nimish, anything specific to sectors that that could be a potential risk? Maybe banks in the mid-cap banks or automobile sector with the semiconductor shortage or something of that sort. Do you see that any sector particularly lagging behind in the coming months?
See, I think I can definitely say IT will continue to do well. There are no two ways about it. Especially because I feel IT has been you look at Accenture's recent results. On that, they've raised guidance from some 13 to 19% growth to directly 19 to 25% growth. I mean, in one quarter, they've raised overall full year revenue guidance by 6%. On that revenue base must be $25-30 billion of revenues. So clearly, overall IT sector continues to do very well. Banks, I think, yes, mid-cap banks, this whole RBL phenomenon might just dampen the sentiment a bit. But this bank's underperformance is also driven a lot by flows and FIIs. If you look at the FIIs when they or any emerging market fund, India weight would typically contain HDFC Bank, maybe ICICI Bank, and a pretty heavy overweight on banks. And that weight reduces, flows are going out, and that's what's happening. So I think, and the banks have actually underperformed last 2 years. They have underperformed significantly the entire market. So maybe there's a time to reverse some of that underperformance. So if at all, I would rather be a buyer of IT and banks at this point of time. And those two are the main sectors, right? Pretty much underpinning the Nifty. And see, the thing is, the sometimes looking at just the headline also is misleading. If I were to take a 6-month performance after IT, the mid-cap index has performed the best. It would be very counterintuitive, right? Especially after a 2-month fall, you would expect that the mid-cap index would have really collapsed. But the mid-cap index has performed better than bank index, than consumer index or metals index, and everyone. So there is some inherent strength. There are definitely stock-specific ideas which are prevalent. And personally, after staying on the sideline for 4-5 months, I've put in some incremental capital in the market over the last week or so, a week to 10 days. So I feel fairly positive from, there's some froth hasn't gone out fully, but definitely this. So banks and IT are the sectors I would definitely look at positively.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the BSE small cap, I mean, it's actually trending up, So, Rajiv, same question to you. There are plenty of new investors who come into the market, right? So, first of all, I mean, is there reason for them to kind of be skeptical about the markets, or should they hodl, as the crypto bros would say? right? What is your advice? Any particular theme that is interesting to you?
No. I mean, this is not like obviously formal advice, but I mean, my personal view is that India probably is going to be the world's fastest growing economy over the next 5-7 years, not just in 1 year or 2 years, but when we look back at the 5-year average, 7-year average, maybe in 2026, 2028, we'll find that India was the outperformer globally. If you believe that, then you will find that many Indian companies will increase their revenues, earnings, and so on. Then obviously that means that the index will be in a better place than it is today. So I think for most of us, most retail investors, it is important to stay invested in the India story. So these are sort of there's always a period at any given time actually in the story of any country's sort of progress and economic emergence. You can find reasons to be like, okay, this is going wrong, that is going wrong, maybe I should pull back, maybe I should stay in cash, whatever. There will be many times like that. But it's very difficult to jump in and jump out and do all of that, right? So I personally feel, better for retail investors to stay invested, to not try to time the market too much, and to keep investing, frankly. Those who have savings should sort of stay invested. That's probably the best way to get rich. And I mean, get rich slowly, as Mangas says.
Right. Let me just add here that,
so that none of that is professional advice, by the way.
I was going to add that. I mean that please don't take this as financial advice. Obviously, all of us are, we're not qualified financial investors in that sense, right? So, or financial advisors in that sense. I mean, I mentioned crypto in jest, but any of you see, other asset classes like crypto, gold, or any of these other things? I mean, any reaction at all in terms of how that will react to this? I mean, up, down, sideways. I mean, anything of that sort?
I mean, I have no clue how crypto moves, honestly. So difficult to say. It is supposed to be a hedge against inflation and all, but every time there is news of tapering and inflation increase, crypto also seems to be falling. So I don't know. See, like everything, if you were to say that there is bubble in pockets of the market, I definitely feel crypto is also one such bubble. Now, whether it will correct 50% or 20% or 90%, I don't know. But I don't even claim to understand that lot, but just intuitively, commonsensically, probably I would expect if the market corrects, I don't think crypto will be immune from that correction. See, whenever there are broad-based corrections, I mean, everything corrects. Now, some things correct 20%, some connect 90%. So it's nothing is going to like go up significantly when there's a broad-based correction, when there's a risk of globally. So if that is the case, and that's what a lot of people seem to believe, then crypto will also definitely go down. Maybe gold has been an underperformer. I think last 1 year it's been flat. I don't know whether there has been some change. Maybe it holds on slightly better than the rest of the assets. It's historically been a hedge, right? And in such markets, so maybe that's a possibility. But Rajiv has been quite a commentator on crypto. Maybe he can add a few things there.
Yeah, Rajiv. So what do you think about, like, I mean, I know this is a bit of a tangent, but what do you think about stuff like Bitcoin or Ethereum as a hedge, like gold, right? And also, I mean, you could possibly comment on the specific tokens itself, right? I mean, based on real use cases, maybe like Solana or some of the other Monero or some of the other crypto tokens that have emerged.
No, so at this point, so something like Bitcoin is clearly store of value. Ethereum, ETH, people are sort of seeing that as a platform on which they can build decentralized applications. So I think that probably is far more interesting. And by the way, I've been sort of intellectually interested in this, and I've been sort of talking about it from a policy perspective as well. So my interest is really as a new technology and how to regulate this in both those aspects. But I think for most people, these are like unregulated exchanges which are operating. In fact, I'd really criticized some of the exchanges as well for their what I see as irresponsible advertising, marketing to people who probably may not know what is actually going on with these tokens and coins. And frankly, many of these could also be, because they are it is an unregulated market, most of them are probably scams. So there's a lot of self-dealing going on here. There is a lot of manipulation going on here. If you did this kind of thing in a regulated market, chances are that it would be a crime. Crypto exchanges, crypto markets aren't regulated. So we don't really know, who's selling what, who's pumping what. And it's a very large like sales game going on for the most part. Having said that, I see the technology has a lot of like potential. I'm very interested in that bit. I'm less interested in the price action, to be very honest. I think for most people, probably what's better is, you stick to what is well understood, is well analyzed for most people, which means, you try to buy good businesses at a decent price and hold on as those businesses grow. That sounds very boring, but that's probably the way to do it.
Right. No, I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think none of the people in the market at this point understand whether it's going up, down, or sideways, right? Especially crypto stuff, right? I mean, if you're excited by the technology and if you see that there's a real use case developing on any particular platform, then go ahead and sort of treat the token or the coin as stocks in the particular technology, and go right ahead and maybe buy some of that, right? If you have that confidence.
And then to actually figure that out, you have to, I think, spend a fair bit of time understanding all the stuff that's going on in that particular sort of niche.
Yeah.
So you have to do your own research and figure things out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think crypto also, it's a genie out of a bottle situation right now. I mean, it's going to be there in some form or fashion, right? So
certainly, I mean, as I've said, I think the Indian government also should regulate it, should tax it.
Yeah.
We want people to be able to play with these new technologies, to experiment with these technologies.
Yeah.
Let's see what comes out of it.
So what I'm hearing broadly from the both of you is that this is a minor fall, right? Guys, don't panic, stay invested in the market and believe in the India story. Maybe 2 or 4 years from now, I mean, things will work out just fine. So any final comments, any final thoughts before we leave, Nimish?
Yeah, I mean, see, I just say everyone has a plan till you are punched in the face, which is what Mike Tyson has said. So maybe tomorrow, don't criticize us if market falls 20%. It's not beyond them. So it's difficult to be soothsayers in any kind of financial markets. But personally, I feel if I were to just take, say, Jan, Feb 2020 to now, which is a 2-year horizon, we've gone through COVID and come back, and we have seen like a super cycle in terms of capital flows and markets as well. 2-3 points I would like to make. One is, while headline markets have gone up, IT has driven most of it, and that has been backed fully by business growth. In the last 2 falls, which was 2000 or 2008, the demand of IT companies had collapsed. People had frozen decision. On the contrary, entirely this time around, it's been 180 degrees. Demand has just shot through the roof. So that's one. So a big chunk of what constitutes market weight hasn't fallen, has gone up, has gone up in proportion to what the demand has been. Might be slightly higher, but that's because there has been growth, profitability increase. There's been record amounts of revenue growth and profitability. So that's on strong ground. That will be 20-25% of the market. Another 25-30% of the market, which is banks, as you see, hasn't done anything. Maybe the previous peak in Jan Feb was 32,000. It is up only 5-7% in 2 years. So there has already been a significant time correction in that. So I would say 45. If I were to take headline, 50% of what constitutes Indian markets I won't say there is any bubble or there is anything. It's because banks haven't risen. IT is performed in line with, it's broadly in line with financial performance. So there might be bubble in parts, and I feel new age companies, definitely there is. I mean, it's not that there is no growth, but the thing is valuations are way out of whack, and definitely but they aren't yet public in any significant way. Their plans to go public might be impacted, valuations be impacted, but they are not going to affect Indian market because there's hardly any weight any of them has in the indices. So I think that's definitely, there are certain other sectors like chemicals and all where you're already seeing a correction happen. So broadly, yes, I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, how overvalued the Indian market is, I would say not more than 4 or 5. So it's fine. There will be a lot of pockets of investments. I think that's one. Second, as I said, I'm just saying what I'm doing, and maybe I'm completely wrong. I have started putting some money in the Indian market incrementally in the last week or so. So I feel fairly good about the next 2-3 years, and I'm not leveraged, so I'm okay even if it falls 5-7%. You can never time things. So that's the second part. And third, I feel, will this whole public market correction and new age company have impact on the private markets? Definitely, because if exit valuations are going to be impacted, entry valuations in private market will also be impacted. Maybe this Series C, Series D, Series E bubble that you have seen. See, one thing is also, it's been driven disproportionately by 2 or 3 funds. They are funding a lot, be it Tiger, Falcon Edge. It's not as broad based as one would like to believe. The valuation uptick, I am saying, funds are participating, but the valuation is driven by 2 or 3 funds. So I think that's the aspect which probably, that's the part of the market which will probably get the most hit, is my belief, over the next 6 to 9 months.
No, and I think that's a great thing. In fact, I mean, if the valuations are more tempered in the private markets, especially leading up to an exit, right? I mean, I think that's probably like a good net positive to have. Rajiv, your thoughts?
No, I think frankly, even some sort of pullbacks, drawdowns here and there are actually overall quite healthy. I continue to think that in India, for now at least, they're driven by certain technical factors, probably, certain macro fears. They may or may not materialize, we don't know, obviously, but the fundamentals are very much intact. I think India has pretty stable macro economy, good sort of overall direction in terms of where we are going, diversifying our economy sort of into manufacturing, reducing dependence on agriculture for employment, all those things. So I think we were talking about the PLI scheme earlier. So I think that is being received very well by both Indian and foreign businesses. So that will see significant sort of job creation. Actually, the Make in India initiative, that might actually really take off in the coming years. We are seeing it in mobile phone manufacturing. We are seeing it to some extent even in defense production. So I think all the pieces are in place for a good run over the next 3 to 5 years. And every time people talk about sort of the fears in the short run, I remember that chart that keeps getting shared around on social media, where it's like a 20-year chart with every dip kind of marked as to what was happening. Why did that dip happen? You could mark like even big events like the 9/11 attacks, financial crisis onto that chart. But over a 20-year trajectory, the economy, if the economy keeps growing, if your businesses keep growing, markets also keep doing well. So that's, I think, something we should all remember. And if you do feel that India has a good or decent medium to long-term future, then there's probably very little doubt about where markets will go. So that's how I feel.
Yeah, I think one point I would like to add, and I think I forgot to cover it. I think, see, one of the reasons for crazy outperformance, say from June to, or May, June to September, October, was also money flow from China to India, right? EM fund, all. And I personally, and I'm biased, so maybe people can just dismiss my opinion, but I feel there is a structural change in which the way the investors are looking at these two countries, right? There's a country overall country view, and clearly people used to be, emerging market funds used to be super overweight China, and maybe equal weight India, and that equal weight had TCS, Infosys, HDFC Bank, maybe a couple of consumer companies. I think that just that positioning, I expect to change the overall perception about India and China as relative markets. There was assumption that because China is a dictatorial or whatever, not a democracy, reforms can happen quickly, regulatory decisions can happen quickly, and they have happened, but they have happened in the opposite direction, which the market. And
You
India,
can also be disappeared quickly.
yeah, India on the other hand, is democracy, things are slow, they are slow, but finally that train seems to be moving, gathering pace, and a bunch of reforms have happened. And we can always complain that farm law should not have been withdrawn, this should not have been done, but I think we have to live. For every 3 steps ahead there will be half a step, 1 step behind in a country like India. But I personally feel from a global capital flow perspective, 2021 is the one year where that perception has changed, and that will definitely play a big part in uh, capital flows and hence valuations of India, overall market valuations of India over the next 3-5 years. At least until the current government is there, it's going to be a big positive, and I'm hoping that continues. So that will definitely impact India much more positively, because there are so much money to flow in EM. This EM to DM, DM to EM, this will keep on happening. But whenever it happens across all these moments, India will still be favored over the next few years. Just
no, and if we can get to the pole position, as the fastest growing economy in the world, all the benefits actually of democracy come to the fore. Peaceful transfer of power, sort of stable macroeconomy. I mean, what is actually happening in Turkey right now is also a lesson, I think, for a lot of people. There was a former CA who was actually praising Turkey's strategy.
No, in fact, there's a very
10 years
famous
ago.
investor, right? Famous emerging market investor who had identified Turkey as a market over India. So I think everything on every front, while be it regulatory, everyone has seen the way Turkish lira has behaved. Whatever people were expecting or hoping secretly, I don't know that what will go wrong in India has gone wrong in other countries, whereas India has gone from strength to strength. So, I mean, I don't see, and as you know, our dear friend Anshu Govil, he says, there are only 3 markets in the world: India, China, and US. Everything else is stocks. There are no markets really. So if China is what it is, US will always be there, and then it's India. Then what else? Money has to come in, unless we mess up, which I don't see the current government doing for sure, messing up.
But just picking up from what you said, I think for the greatest amount of time, I mean, there was always this India-China comparison, and we would sort of be told, hey, look at China, right? I mean, look what they're doing. And everyone, even, supposed advocates of democracy would kind of like the whole brute forcing of growth that China had done over the last couple of decades, right? And saying that, hey, man, we should have that strong political will to sort of do those things. But what they kind of didn't factor is it can go both ways. I mean, it can accelerate and deaccelerate, very rapidly. And then you contrast the India approach of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas, which is certainly slow, slower in comparison, but it's a lot more inclusive, a lot more bottom up, and thereby a little more stable than what we would see in the case of China, right? So
no, absolutely. I mean, I can tell you, 2016 February, I visited China during my startup days as well, and honestly, I was quite flabbergasted at what was happening. The Chinese people used to really work hard, those startups, and there was this to Ofo and I forget the other name. This bikes all over. The Mobike, right?
Didi.
I don't forget.
Almost become a footnote. That is it's a story in those days.
Yeah, and then Didi was doing whatever it was doing, and then of course Meituan, and some of them did well, but just with one clap of hand, everything has been reversed. And what that dynamism, what was there, is now seen in India in 2021. But of course, with no threat of such one overarching one day regulation will come and reverse everything. So I feel that should reflect in valuations. The innovation, the energy, everything should reflect in valuations and greater acceptability of more and more investors. I mean, someone like A16Z, which is like one of the biggest investors, just ended up doing their first investment in an Indian company. And these are small signs, and I'm sure more and more investors will open up. That's
even Union Square Ventures, a firm that I really respect, this venture firm in New York. So USV also made their first India investment this year. So,
Right.
so like Nimish said, these are all signposts. I think it will only sort of build up over time in the right direction.
Right. All right. That's a great note to end the podcast on. I mean, indeed, we can go on and talk about this, but the short summary is, if you believe in the India story, then stay invested. Right. Of course, again, just to add, none of this is financial advice. Do your, diligence and apply your discretion. But thank you so much, Nimesh and Rajiv. This was a fascinating conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, Roshan.
Thank you, Roshan. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having us. It was fun.
Bye.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Bharat Varta podcast. If you want to see more content like this, then don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We started Bharat Varta to facilitate long-form discussions on politics, policy, and culture. We don't necessarily endorse anything that was said in this episode. If you wish to offer us feedback, do reach out to us on social media. We are at Bharat Varta on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You could also get in touch with us on our website, www.bharatvarta.in. The links are in the description below. Until next time, stay safe, take care, and Jai Hind.